maximize every opportunity so that you can become legendary.
What adjustments can you make right now to make yourself 1%
Your
better?
only goal is to be the best version of you.
Jesse, Michael, welcome to Becoming Legendary. Thank you so much for jumping on here with us today. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for inviting us.
Heck yeah.
Doing amazing. Thanks, Patrick. Great to be here.
So nice to get to finally catch up. I feel like I've been running around in circles near you guys for a really long time and never actually crossing paths.
Where are you located? Are you up in Colorado?
I am in Colorado. Yeah, I'm in a little tiny unincorporated township called Glade Park, just on top of Colorado National Monument. Pretty much the middle of nowhere, about 30 miles from the Utah border.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Very nice.
It is the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Can you do me and everybody else listening the favor of just kind of giving us the quick little introduction to who you guys are?
Sure. Go ahead, Jesse. It's all yours.
Sure. All right, I'll go first then. So I have founded a business called Optimyze with Michael here on the podcast with us, and we've had this business for about 4 years. It's a big part of my life and has helped me align my purpose and career. I'm a father of 2 amazing children and live here I've been in Phoenix for about 20 years. I grew up in New Jersey, born and raised out there. Had a career as a martial artist for many years and got into the health and wellness space after just really not only being into performance, but seeing a lot of the mental illness and some physical illness around in my family and friends and things like that. And it kept drawing me into working on myself. Really enjoyed the mind-body connection of martial arts, and then moved into yoga and started my yoga practice back in 2001, and just kind of kept moving on that journey and loved health and wellness, and finally made it a career. I also have a commercial landscape business and that I started in 2008, and yeah, just love what I'm doing with Optimyze, love what we're doing, what we've created, and what the community has become, and really inspired by others. I love breath work. I teach breath work, practice breath work, and yeah, it's a big part of my life, and still teach, but I'm also still a student. So it's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Jess.
Hey, everybody. I'm Michael. Also one of the co-founders of Optimyze. I grew up in the East Coast as well. I grew up in Queens, New York, born and raised. At the age of 20, I left New York. I joined the U.S. Navy. I got involved in the helicopter search and rescue program, was stationed in Pensacola, Florida, where I went through rescue swimmer school, aviation school, anti-submarine warfare school, and then eventually got stationed out in San Diego. I lived in San Diego, deployed with aircraft carriers all around the world, mainly spent most of my career in Asia and the Middle East. Got an opportunity to visit a lot of different countries along the way, but because of the time frame that I was in, a lot of time spent in the Middle East, I got actually to Afghanistan in November 2001 and spent 8 months there, and then got to Iraq in February 2003. We deployed for Iraq, and during that time, I had some health issues when I separated from the military, mainly neurological. I had a spinal cord injury, and so I got into alternative health and wellness, mainly through really searching to find solutions for myself. The main issues I was having was neurological pain, inflammation, had a surgery done to my neck where they reconstructed my neck, and then kind of got a recommendation to do another surgery and realized it was time for me to explore some other options. How I got into kind of what we do at Optimyze now, hot and cold therapies and saunas and biohacking and the Wim Hof Method. And Jesse and I met along the way through the Wim Hof Method, really, and that's about it. So now I help and run the facility at Optimyze in Tempe and also Arcadia, teach the Wim Hof Method throughout the United States, Mexico, and recently did a tour in Ecuador, which was really cool, teaching down there. And yeah, that's a portion of my story. So nice to meet you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man.
Can you tell me what goes on at anti-submarine warfare school?
Yeah, it's actually mostly mathematics, believe it or not.
Interesting.
So, yeah, which was really tough for me because math was definitely not my subject. Not know that, but you have to learn how to track submarines through mathematical equations first, so that you have to understand it. And obviously, when you get to the fleet, when you're doing it real time, it's mostly equipment that does the math for you. But we study oceanography, so we learn how sound travels underneath the water. Temperature, salinity, and pressure are the main components of how sounds can travel. So some parts of the world, sound can travel many miles, and you can pick up things from a really far distance. And in some parts of the world, sound does not travel very far. So you have to understand the ocean before you can understand, what's actually making noise underneath the ocean and how you might find, a submarine in the giant Pacific Ocean. So you really learn a lot about oceanography, but you also learn a lot about different submarines from around the world, because every country has different technology. There's electric submarines, there's nuclear submarines, there's diesel submarines. So you have to become proficient in knowing what pretty much know your enemy. So a lot of studying, a lot of math, a lot of studying, a lot of engineering.
That is a wild title. That is a wild description. That is so far from what I would have expected it to be. It is just an amazing openness of the mind there. So thank you.
Welcome.
As we cycle back into the things that are closer to life, maybe now, and in your space in the biohacking world, your space at Optimyze, hot, cold, light, all of the things that you guys work within. One of the things that first strikes me is the challenge of having created a business that is really and truly beyond perception of the majority of the populace, right? Is that you somehow have to become a cipher between this vision of the capacity to hack into your own biology and what the modern American thinks is possible within their biology. When you guys start to become this cipher, this bridge of knowledge between what you offer and what people are aware of, what is the pathway that you start down?
Good question.
Very interesting.
You guys are going to be thinking a little bit today.
Yeah, Patrick, great question. I found that a lot of people that find us, they're already open to the idea. They've heard about some of these biohacks or these techniques. It's like a group of people that when they find it, you feel so good and it's so impactful that you want to tell everybody about it. So we don't really spend too much time convincing people. People feel it, as Wim says, feeling is understanding. So once you start feeling the effects of these therapies, and then also being around a lot of positive, supportive people and community, you just feel it. And so there's a lot of educating, but in essence, we're really these therapies are bringing people back to their breath, back to feeling helping them get out of their heads and connecting deeper.
Yeah, there's definitely a group of people that are in the podcast world. So they're listening to podcasts, and pretty much everybody on podcasts these days talking about like cold therapy or breath work or something like that. So they're familiar with it, and then they're sharing it, and then they're posting on their Instagram, and people kind of want to try it. They don't fully understand it, but they want to try it. And then that turns into, them learning more, wanting to learn more, and either being part of the community and using it daily, or just kind of going down the rabbit hole of learning about Wim Hof Method and, Dave Asprey and Ben Greenfield and all the kind of big names in this space.
Now, with the word specifically, optimize. So, what does that mean to you? And then how do you? I have an answer already formed because I've had the pleasure of working for you guys for a number of months. But I don't want to steal that. I want to. So, what does the word optimize mean to you first and foremost? And then how do you start to facilitate, or how do you further grow the optimization inside of somebody's own experience?
So really the word optimize came out of a brainstorming session, right? Ultimately, we were, trying to find the name that described what we were doing most. And, as you look into this world of, let's just call it, say, biohacking and health, you hear the word optimization quite often. Optimization, optimized, being optimized, and if you just look at blood work, and you look at blood work in specific, this is an example I like to use, there's these ranges that essentially will tell you if you're healthy, if you're low, or if you're high, but they don't really talk much about like the optimal, what are the optimal levels? Like, let's just say vitamin D, what are the optimal levels, or, where should something be? So, our vision and what we're bringing to the communities is how to get people into optimal levels of health, not just I'm feeling okay, I'm not sick, or like, how do we, motivate, educate, provide community, all these different outlets to, one, understand what is optimal, and two, give them an opportunity to push their body into these optimal states. So we really wanted to focus more on optimal behaviors versus just feeling okay.
Good answer. Yeah, I feel a lot of people in the optimization world within the community of Optimize, right? They keep coming back because they're noticing that they're maybe taking less pharmaceuticals, right? They're noticing that they're having less trips to the doctor. They're noticing that they're feeling better. They're noticing that they're optimized, So like Jesse so beautifully said, and Wim says himself, that feeling is understanding, right? So all the therapies within Optimize give you that sense of wellness, that sense of that deeper connection or that deeper relationship to yourself. I think that's beautiful. Yeah, well constructed and encapsulated within that name. I like the MY instead of MIZ too. That's super rad. Yeah.
Yeah, the other one was taken, so
okay, yeah.
We had to be creative.
And Jesse, I wanted to jump in. I got a specific question for you, Jesse, that I haven't asked you in person. I'm going to ask you right now. I saved it for this very moment. So I know that you've been a professional fighter before in the past, and with a record of, is it 9-1?
9-1, 9-1, depending on what. Yeah.
Stellar, man. So what did you learn in that world that you bring into your life now? And it doesn't have to be business related. It can be personal. I'm just so curious about that side of you that maybe some of the listeners might not know as well.
Yeah. It's hard to sum up maybe all the lessons learned, but I think there's so many things that we take out of those most challenging situations in our lives. And, you know, when you put yourself in danger or in like a primal environment, battle, you know, you have to really dig deep to see, you know, what you're made of, you know, or you have to play with those lines of defeat. So you have to face defeat, and you have to really give 100% of really all that your mind and body are capable of, you know, in that one avenue. So that was a sport, and you know, those fights really, they were a very unique environment where I've never really experienced much like it, where you have to give so much, and you're in such, you know, you're in a dangerous situation. So just a better knowing of maybe myself and that, yeah, training to stay calm under pressure as well. Something I took out of that. Also, that a big lesson really was that there's a big difference between, you know, I was able to separate my opponent from like an enemy. So like, you know, I had a lot of love and admiration for these people that I was, you know, trying to hurt or win, or, you know, battle. And so there was these separations and ability to turn it off and on. So I could be, you know, at war with somebody 1 second and then be loving and nurturing and caring to them as soon as that engagement was over. So that was something that I still hold with me today. I could, you know, so that was a powerful lesson.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
To piggyback on that a little bit, and I'd love to get the answer from both of you, because I'm really curious about the personality types that have created you guys. To piggybacking on that idea of kind of accomplishment, do you find that you find more fulfillment from accomplishment, like things that you have done, or potential things that could be done?
Good question. I haven't really thought about that, you know, so I have to kind of take a pause. You know, I think it's always good to reflect on your past. You know? A lot of the things that you do prepares you for the future. I don't necessarily, you know, I didn't necessarily always see that so clearly. But for example, I mean, I was hunting submarines throughout the world. And how in the hell would that translate to health and wellness? And, you know, breath work and spirituality and alternative medicine and all the things that I'm kind of involved in and have passion for now. But I was understanding, like, at a very scientific level, that everything is frequency and vibration when I was hunting things in the ocean. I can tell if a submarine was making a left turn, a right turn, climbing or diving, just based on the sounds that I was receiving. And I can interpret that. And now I teach people about frequency and vibrations because we have something called a biocharger. And a biocharger is using harmonics. And I spent, you know, hours and hours and hours and hours studying harmonics in the Navy and trying to understand them underwater. And now I have, you know, have to interpret harmonics when it comes to the frequencies that are coming off the biocharger and their healing capacity and different things that they're targeting, whether it be inflammation. So I think it's really important to reflect on the past because it prepares you a lot of times for the future and the accomplishments that I did have and the responsibilities that I had. I probably wouldn't have been prepared for this level of work and where we're at and the level of confidence that I have to get in front of people to speak if I didn't go through those experiences. So I very much appreciate that. But, you know, for me, I don't really look too far into the future, to be quite honest with you. I don't know why I don't really. I think, you know, sometimes you look too far into the future, it could be like a little scary of what it can be. I get a lot of feedback, of course, on, oh, this Optimyze, this is going to be huge. This is going to be everywhere. And a part of me knows that already, but I try not to spend too much time there and think too far ahead. I really just try to focus on what do I need to do today? What do I need to reflect on this week? How do I win the day? How do I win the week? How do I win this month? And feel like I've accomplished a lot and made some improvement. Because if I spend too much time in the future, I've made that mistake before in other parts of my life, and it doesn't necessarily always work out the way you intended it to be. So it also just kind of keeps me humble as well and present. So I spend probably more time focusing on today and maybe reflecting on experiences from the past and how it's prepared me for the day. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank
Jesse,
you.
do you have anything on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for sure, I think for me, I don't stay much in the past. I mean, I work to stay in the future. I mean, in the present as much as I can, but I like visualization, and I do like visualizing what I want to manifest. And so I don't want to get too caught up in it. Like, as Michael said, I'm with him on that. Cause I want to stay in the present and just accept. And this is where life is happening. Right. But I'm definitely more, proud. Was the question more proud of future accomplishments or potential accomplishments? Maybe. I think that's where my energy is. It's on now and the future. The past has built me and made me who I am. And I'm, proud of some things, and I'm proud of and grateful for everything that has made me who I am and got me to where I am. But what gets me excited most is the future, the present and the future. And, I have these ideas, like I envision a lot of different scenarios, and these things kind of amp me up. And I think my whole life I've had that. I've had different, it's cool to look back on the visions that I've had when I was younger. It was very much like, sports focused and, and winning this or that and that, but it's cool how it's evolved and that, super motivating for me.
Do you feel understood?
Is that for Jesse?
Yeah, let's start with Jesse. I think so. So my question, I think it's an interesting, I don't think that, I think that the way people draw fulfillment is different. And I have a theory that's kind of starting to develop where people who feel really attached to the potential of future outcomes don't necessarily always feel the most understood. So I'm curious if Jesse, if you feel understood as a being.
Yeah, I do.
Cool.
Yes, it depends who, in what context. I mean, that's a really broad question, but by many, I don't feel understood. By many, I do. Overall, though, I feel like my heart and intention emanate, and so people do get a good feeling of who I am.
Yeah.
Right when they meet me, because this is who I am. I try not to. I'm comfortable in my skin, and I think that reflects. But of course, there's different situations. Maybe there's certain situations where I'm not as comfortable. So,
and then professionally, as you guys kind of have this spearhead of biohacking energy, I'm curious how understood you feel Optimyze is within the scope of the world.
Oh, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think that's one of the biggest areas we're focused on is how do we educate the community and translate what we do into the average, I would say, mainstream. I would say what we're doing at Optimyze is not mainstream. I think it's becoming more mainstream. There's more people talking about it. There's obviously heavy hitters in this space that have huge followings, and you're seeing more people in kind of celebrity statuses that are doing some of the things that we're doing. We teach the Wim Hof Method, and the Goop Network did an episode with Wim Hof. And then, a month later, I have all these people coming to my workshops that said they found Wim Hof through Goop and Gwyneth Paltrow, and they had no idea of breath work or cold. And now they're in my workshop. And then from my workshop, they're learning the fundamentals of breathing exercises and cold water therapy. And then they're translating into, other modalities that we offer at Optimyze. And now they're, understanding light therapies and other techniques that we have. So it's a growing area. I think that's one of the most glorifying and fun things about what we do is educating people on what we do. So that's a gap, and I enjoy that piece. I enjoy the message of helping people to understand their connection with nature. And even though a lot of the equipment at Optimyze might seem high tech, because it's a biocharger or some, acoustic device or brainwave device or, an infrared sauna, and they might not understand the general idea of these things. When you relate it to nature, it just makes sense. The sun and red light therapy and infrared, frequencies, cold water therapy, water heaters are relatively new to mankind. For thousands of years, people have been doing cold water therapy. Cold showers were a daily occurrence in most parts of the world. Cold showers are a daily occurrence. If you study, a little bit of history and anthropology, you learn that people were using cold water therapy for ritual, for spiritual practices, for medicinal practices, well documented and recorded. Saunas, as fancy as an IR sauna looks, with all the cool colors and obviously the decor. The reality is that Native Americans and other tribal people have been using heat therapies for spiritual practices, but also for medicinal practices for a really long time. So one of the funnest things is just translating that and showing people that these devices just allow us to get back to nature and make it convenient, right? Especially for like a daily practice.
Sure.
So I really enjoy kind of filling that gap, the education gap that's out there.
Speaking more on the nature theme, you spent a lot of time in the jungle. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that? And then really more specifically, Michael, what did you learn that you apply to your life now? Same sort of question that I had for Jesse, but this is obviously referencing your jungle nature experience. That's really fascinating.
Yeah. So I grew up in New York City, and I grew up basically just learning about European history. Most of the history that I learned was about European history. It was, science and modern medicine and all the wonderful things that people had accomplished from Europe. And I thought that was great and still do. But when I moved to Arizona, I learned that the Native American spirit was it was just more common here. In New York, you don't even hear about it.
Yeah.
You don't even meet people that even are Native American at all. Like I didn't in my upbringing. But when I came out here, I worked with people that literally came from different tribes, and I just became really curious about them and their history. So I really started to explore the history of North America, Central America, and South America. And I became really obsessed with learning, what do they have to say about spirituality? What's their perspective on health and wellness and how the world turns and what happens when we die and where do we come from and all of these different things that religions basically, speak to. So that took me to the jungle, and I was studying the tribes that exist down there. And there's a variety of them that live along the Amazon basin, and they all speak either Shipibo or Quechua, and they have a lot of similarities, but they also have a lot of differences in how they go about things. And I'd heard references that they are able to speak to plants and can communicate with plants. And, early on in my learning, I thought of it more as a metaphor, and I found it interesting. But when I started to get really into their work and study with them and learn from them in the jungle, I learned that they did have direct communication with plants. And I also found the similarities that even though I knew a lot about European history, what I never really studied was European indigenous history, right? So like who was hanging around Europe before the Romans came to power, before, you know, all the kingdoms came about, like who are the people? And if you study them, they're pretty much identical to the Native Americans in North, Central, and South America. They kind of had very similar types of symbols, similar practices, similar types of approaches towards medicine and spirituality and multiple gods and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I learned so much in the Amazon. I learned really the lesson of like, we are all connected. We are all one. Very, very deeply understanding that. I learned that nature has a lot to teach us, but you have to really tune into that vibration in order to pick up on the subtle kind of learnings from nature. Otherwise, you're going to be tuned out and you're not on the same frequency and you're not going to hear a word they have to say. And a lot of their shamanic practices and a lot of their medicine is how to get your vibration in tune with nature so that you can start to establish communication with these plants. I mean, one of the things they make you do when you're in the jungle is they put you on a diet. You go and do what they call a dieta. And dieta is very simple. You know, you don't eat sugar, you don't eat salt, you don't eat anything that's essentially considered pleasurable. You do a whole lot of nothing for long periods of time, you know, alone. So you're kind of filtering out all distractions. And then they're bringing you a potion, essentially. Really what it is just like a tea that they make from a specific plant or a tree. And you start to drink this plant or tree, and then you start to kind of form a relationship with it. And we do it all the time in our own society, and we don't even know it because we're drinking coffee every single day. Sure. We're not realizing that that element of coffee or that plant is actually like having a relationship with us. We have this relationship with coffee or with tea or with something else. So we're actually doing dietas all the time. We're just unconscious about it, where in the jungle is really intentional. And yeah, it was a really good experience for me to learn about what the Native Americans have to say. And here's the other thing. There's this whole movement of like, you know, people are more interested in what the tribes have to say. I mean, people are going down. There's a lot of people drinking ayahuasca. There's, you know, every podcast I feel like is talking about it these days. But guess what? The Native Americans, they didn't have it all figured out either. Mm-hmm. You know, they had some things figured out pretty good and they have interesting perspectives, but there's a lot they didn't have figured out too. So no one really has all the answers. You know, it's really just a collective of knowledge, wisdom, and practice. But they have a lot of good stuff to share. So I think it's cool that gringos like us are actually paying attention to what they have to say. Yeah.
Paying attention and then applying some of those things that you learn to your day-to-day life, right? I mean, Optimyze, you can feel the jungle when you walk into that place. You can feel the spirituality piece when you walk into that place. I think that's beautiful that you've tied those two things together that people, you know, can and cannot relate to. Like you said, I mean, we're experiencing plants on a day-to-day basis with coffee and with other modalities like that, but it's about then tuning into that frequency or giving yourself the possibility of tuning into that next frequency. And it sounds like to me, like you got to maybe go to the jungle to do that. Either that or out away from the burbs, right? The energy of the city.
Yeah, their songs are interesting. Their songs are basically just tones. And they say that the plants teach them the songs, and then they communicate the songs that were taught to them by plants. And then those are the actual frequencies that are healing people. So when they're in a ceremony, it's not really the medicine that you drank. That's just really getting your body tuned into a very specific frequency. It's actually the songs. Interesting. And the practitioners do lots and lots of dietas in silence and very disciplined, so that they can learn these songs. And the songs are really what are doing most of the work.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a different philosophy
It is.
than we have in the West, for sure.
So this is a question for both of you guys. We've talked a little bit about self-mastery. We've talked about a little bit about spirituality, but here's a question. It is better to conquer yourself than to win 1,000 battles, right? That's the old expression or the adage. It's better to conquer yourself than to win 1,000 battles. So what area of your life are you seeking greater mastery? Is that a day-to-day practice? Is that like an intention you set? Or yeah, I'd like to hear from both of you guys.
Well, I'll kick it off. For me, it's once again, like I try not to look too far into the future. So it's really practicing what I preach is most important, leading by example. I teach people in my workshops all the time. I say it a lot with the team. I say it a lot at the center, that discipline is the key to happiness. So if I'm not practicing discipline myself, then I'm not in alignment with my teachings and my word. So, the thing that I'm practicing most is self-discipline in all aspects, in all areas. Some things are very easy for me and I don't struggle much with them. And some things are extremely challenging and require like more focus and attention. So I spend most of my time on really sharpening my mind, and keeping balanced of mind, body, and spirit. Am I working on my mind? Am I working on my body? Am I working on my spirit? Because there's so many times in my life where I'm working on my body, where I'm exercising and I'm, starting to look great and feel great in that area. But, I'm not going to seminars. I'm not learning anything new. I'm not doing anything, or spiritually, I'm not doing shit. I'm not meditating, or I'm not doing cultivating any sort of, spiritual practice. So for me, it's simple. I just try to maintain good levels of discipline, lead by example, and then continue to balance those three areas and try to figure out, okay, well, what am I not doing? I'm like working way too much, work. I'm not taking care of my body. I'm eating shitty. I'm not exercising. I need to get back to the mountain. I need to conquer the mountain every day. Those types of things.
Thank you. Jesse.
Yeah. One of the things I'm really working on and continue to work on is just, trying to bring that awareness to areas of my life that I'm, don't have the most awareness of, finding those areas I'm not aware of, because that awareness is really the first step to any change, why are certain habits formed. And so that's a big work in progress. The relationships that I have, my relationship with my children, the people around me, just being able to work to find presence in as many moments as I possibly can, and connect with that present moment. I definitely am, although I take things day by day, I'm a little bit future focused sometimes. And so it's like the next thing, what's the next thing? And so kind of working to remind myself, just like be here now. And, just take it as it goes. Life is happening right now. And to breathe, connect more with the breath. So those are a few things I'm working on.
Beautiful. You were just at the breathing festival for about 3 or 4 days, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me the biggest takeaway so far from the breathing festival. If no one knows what the breathing festival is, it's a festival that's put on by Dan Brule, correct? Or his, well, you tell me, heck, you were just there.
Yeah. So the International Breath Festival was formed, by Dan and a few other people. And Dan Brule is just a gentleman who's been teaching breath work for 40, 50 years and has a military background as well, but just incredible storyteller and really he brings so many people together in this breath movement from all different walks. And so this breath festival, I think last year it was maybe virtual, with the restrictions and everything going on. So this year they did this one in 4 weeks. They put it together,
Wow.
really last minute, and they promote all different types of breath work. And so it was just a great experience where all these different speakers and people from different backgrounds, but really recognized leaders in the breath world came and spoke and took people through practices and also connected. So many gems that I took away from the last few days and really inspiring me, and hearing a lot of the stories of these OGs of the breath movement and how it sparked, and it was incredible. So I guess, one of the biggest things or the tidbits that I took away was that it was a woman, I think it was Benny. It's an 83-year-old woman, but her and a few other people were just talking about the breath in different ways. And one of the things that they were saying was that, the breath is something you, of course, want to become so intimate with. And whatever's going on in your life, this is what you have. You can always come back to your breath. And that, one day we'll all be on our deathbeds. And, we hope that we have people around us, right, that are there for us. But when it comes down to it, you're just going to have, it's you and your breath, that last breath you're going to take, and so honing into that and just, getting more intimate with that and really the presence of life, the source of life. And so that was
beautiful,
powerful, statement. And so really just that it's just a lifelong practice, and becoming aware of the different ways you breathe at different times. And it's just infinite, it's a lifelong practice. So
the breath is the language of the soul, correct? That is coined, if you will, by Mr. Dan Burley. And I remember him saying that during his visits to Optimyze, both in Tempe and Arcadia. And that was one of the most memorable things for me, to see him in the flesh, right? You talk about a vibration that he holds, right? It is such a strong vibration. He is so connected to every breath in and every breath out that you can feel that in him. And so it for me, it was super impactful to be around a community of people that were all just speaking about the breath. I mean, Michael, I've been to your Wim Hof workshops, had the pleasure of doing that. And that type of environment or community is really, really palpable and powerful, because when people are all on the same wavelength, the same vibration, talking about something, the language of the soul, right? How we communicate to our never-endingness, if you will, our wholeness is something that I will always remember. And Jesse, you gave me the beautiful tip, 2 tips. One, you said, think about breathing through your nose more often. That's really important, especially when you're under pressure. And that really has helped me. That's helped me to lessen the amount of pressure I feel when stress or anxiety comes into my life. So thank you for that. And number 2, for those of you who don't know about strips over your mouth, nasal breathing at night is really beneficial. Helps you sleep better, have more energy throughout the course of the day. There's less snoring, so you don't wake up your partner. There's a lot of good benefits for the strip over the mouth. So thanks for those 2 tidbits, Jess.
Of course. And just to kind of piggyback on that, one thing, another tidbit, right, is that the mouth is a powerful place to breathe at times. So you can release a lot of tension through your mouth. So exhaling through the mouth at times is a very powerful way, if you're holding tension, to let it go. So although nasal breathing, is the definitely preferred way of, you want to be breathing through your nose most of the time, there is definitely times if you're holding tension that you can use your mouth for a lot of beneficial ways when you're breathing. So,
yeah. Thank you for that.
My pleasure. As
So
you guys look at, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to throw out a question to you guys, because I was, how long have you guys had this the podcast, and how did you two meet?
So podcast has been going on for, I think, probably 6-ish years now. Pretty early to the podcasting game. Brian joined the podcast beginning of 2020.
Exactly right.
Rad.
That's correct. Yep.
And Brian will tell us how we met because he knows better than I do.
First of all, thanks for the question, Jesse. And so we met. So Patrick used to own a yoga studio in Chandler called Vitality. Vitality was voted the best yoga studio in the Valley for a number of years running in a row. He had a lot of the early biohacking things available. He had a sleep deprivation tank there. He had a whole body vibration plates, which shake on the ground, if you're familiar with those. Red light therapy, the Normatec compression pants. So he was sort of on that path for many years. Unfortunately, COVID took the rug out from underneath him, and Patrick pivoted and decided to move into a different direction. But yeah, we've cultivated a friendship. First, one from me being his student. It was actually Vitality was the first yoga studio I ever went into. So that was going back into like 2016, right? I think something like that, maybe even 15. Yeah, we've sort of called. Yeah, we've cultivated and I'm still coming back to him. So I guess you didn't show me the wrong way, which is a good thing. But no, so we've cultivated a relationship from there, and it's continuing to grow and prosper. So the podcast has been an interesting journey. My number one task is to find great guests, interesting people like yourself. So that's kind of why I've been brought in, I guess, if you will. So the collaboration between Patrick's own vision and myself, I think, seems to work pretty well.
So great to hear a little bit of the background.
Yeah. So on that front, I'm curious from both of you guys, kind of as a start to wrap things up here. People who I'm sure have tested many of the forefronts of potential within what is possible in shifting and adjusting the human being. Can you give me the number one thing that you've found the most valuable and the thing that you've found to be the biggest waste of time, money, and energy?
In relationship to
Biohacking.
Got it. All right. Interesting question.
I mean, if you want to take it somewhere else, take it somewhere else. I don't know what
that's a really good question. Biohacking. So, all right. Just for me, so I had a spinal injury. So, I needed to figure out how to solve it.
How did you hurt yourself, Michael? Sorry to interrupt. I'm just curious. Was it a
combination? It's a combination of things. In helicopter community, it's actually really common for discs to vibrate out of place. When you're in a helicopter, there's a lot of vibrations. It's always vibrating. It's loud, it's noisy, and it's kind of vibrating at a weird frequency because it's literally just this big rotor just like pulling this really heavy aircraft through the sky. It's just it kind of helicopters really don't make much sense. There's really nothing like it actually that exists in nature. If you really think about it, there's hummingbirds, and but they flap a little bit differently and stuff. But helicopters, they're just awkward. So I think it's a combination of many hours flying in helicopters, but also when you get hoisted from the ocean, when you're in the ocean and you get put on a cable, the cable connects to your chest and it pulls you out of the water. And, it can be really violent because there could be a lot of drag in the cable. And if somebody starts pulling on that cable, they can drag you through the water before you get lifted out. And everybody's got kind of a different skill set in that area, and the wind's blowing the helicopter around and the helicopter's kind of creating a storm. So it's really a combination of wear and tear on my spine from helicopter community, physical activity, And eventually one of the discs left the area of my spine, and what it did is it kind of punctured the sheath that your spinal cord sits in. So that's why I had most of the neurological issues. I was not only losing spinal fluid, but I actually had like scarring on my spinal cord. So that's really what happened. And when I started to go down the rabbit hole to try to find solutions after my first surgery, realizing that the first surgery didn't do the job, I tried all kinds of different things. I was really exploring the mind and the body, and I was paying for things and paying for one-on-ones and appointments and stuff. And there were certain things that were really helpful for me, and there were certain things that I didn't feel anything. So to answer your question, the thing that kind of moved the needle the most for me was, well, I think ice baths and breath work was definitely one of them, only because I can do it daily. You know, it was something that I had access to that I can use as a tool daily. And it really moved the needle because it changed my state immediately. And that was really important for me because I realized that a lot of my pain and issues were coming from like my state, the state that I was in, my mental state, my emotional state. Because when I reflected back and I looked at all of these times where I was in the most pain, where I was having the most difficult time with my injury, and when it would flare up and be at its worst, it was times where my self-care was zero, my self-love was low, my habits were toxic, the people that I was spending time with, all of those lifestyle things were occurring. And you know, when I started to feel better and started to kind of move away from pain and issues, was because I was making significant lifestyle changes. So the cold and hot and breath work were big drivers for me because I had access to them and I could do them every day. Before I started, you know, Optimyze with Jesse, I would just go to the gym, and, you know, there's days I would go to work out and there's days I would just go to use the sauna. And I literally just became like a fiend of doing 25 minutes in the sauna every day. No, you know, it was a non-negotiable for me. And listening to, you know, things like, you know, spirituality and just kind of changing, you know, what I was feeding myself energetically. And that created big shifts. But, you know, some of the things that I tried that, well, there's ayahuasca made huge shifts because it gave me like really deep understanding of myself, you know, and my patterns and my habits and some ancestral stuff that I had kind of carried with me in my DNA from my father and my parents, you know, that I was like completely unaware of, that I was working through and resolving, but it wasn't something that I can do, you know, so routinely, or there wasn't necessary to do that. Even though I did sit in a lot of ceremonies, I would say more than most. But there were certain things that I did that really didn't move the needle at all for me. You know, there was like Reiki. You know, I don't have anything bad to say about Reiki. You know, there's people who practice it and it works really well for them. And but, you know, I had spent some money on those sessions and it didn't move the needle for me at all. And yeah, I would say, yeah, well, that kind of stuff didn't do that much for me. But the hot and cold, the breath work, it was like, oh, I felt that there's something that shifted, and I feel different leaving the session than I did coming in.
Nice.
So,
Thank you.
Jesse, anything pop out for you?
Yeah, you know, so a reoccurring theme in my life, and I think a lot of people can relate, and I still just try to keep this with me, is that all these therapies and techniques and things, I think every single one of them can be overdone. So, you know, there's a bunch of quotes. It's like medicine could be poison, or one person's medicine is another person's poison. So everybody's different, you know, and there's so many powerful tools. The sauna use has been an amazing tool for me. But all these things can be overdone. So if you know, and find something you love to do, but be careful to not overdo it, because with every single thing that I found that worked for me, I would push it to the point of, making it potentially negative, right? If you go in the sauna for 2 hours a day, it might not be great, but if you do it every day for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, that's perfect. Or maybe you got to start less. So that's I think a really powerful lesson. A lot of people in my shoes that were just like all about pushing, and at a certain point in my life, all about grinding and outworking everybody else. I would find myself continually learning that lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is great wisdom. I appreciate the wisdom you guys have shared with us today. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, for doing rad things with Optimyze, for being rad beings, and for being you.
Yeah. We appreciate you guys so much.
Thanks so much, Patrick. Yeah, pleasure to meet you, Patrick. Great to see you, Brian. Thanks for all you've done.
Thank you guys
for having us. Listen,
Nice to meet you guys. Thank you.
We'll be sure to coordinate. I'll coordinate with you guys when this gets released. More than likely it'll be March 1. So we can So we can
March 1st,
we can formulate some social media strategies, if you will, get this blasted out to as many beings as possible. Yeah. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you both. All the love in the world. And that's it. I'll see you guys soon.
All right. See you, Brian.
See you guys. See you, Brian.
Thanks, guys.
Patrick.
Thank you guys.